So good evening, hope you're all well. Just finished now for Christmas, looking forward to almost a couple of weeks off. Hopefully I can get some videos out in the meantime. So I'm going to try something a little bit different now. I'm going to give you my own awards, end of year awards, and maybe look ahead to 2023. It's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, don't take it too seriously. Caveat, strong caveat here, some of these awards are leaned more towards UK fighters, not all of them, but some of them. And also I'm no longer the avid detailed boxing fan that I used to be, so I don't watch absolutely everything. I just try and catch up on the best of what I can. Okay, so in terms of the fight of the year, there are two fights that stand out for me in what was a reasonable year in terms of action, albeit we had a lot of disappointments as well this year. So I think most people's choice, and I'm going to do this as a tie, is the Michael Conlan Lee Wood fight. That's got to be up there. It was just a fantastic fight. It had shifts in momentum, it had skill, power, absolutely everything. And that final round knockout that Lee Wood pulled out of the bag was something incredible. That was an absolute fantastic fight. And I think pushing that close was the Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor unification. Again, Madison Square Garden. Both of these fights were on DAZN, so I'm not always anti-DAZN in spite of what some people might think, in spite of what I might say. But those were two fantastic fights. I thought the Serrano-Katie Taylor one was absolutely brilliant. It was nip and tuck all the way through. We had Taylor's technical skills are off the scale. Serrano, again, she's a fantastic fighter. She's got a really high work rate, very, very quick hands and quick feet. I thought the judges got the right winner, but again, it was one of those fights you wouldn't have complained about a 96-94 going either way. So those were the two best fights for me of the year. In terms of the fighter of the year, that for me has to be Dimitri Bivol. Bivol was just superb in 2022. He caused a big upset beating Canelo Alvarez, whilst there were people in the trade who were quietly confident about that outcome. I did not see that one coming. I'll call it now. I thought Canelo would be too much for him, too experienced, too tenacious, but Bivol was brilliant. He was also brilliant beating Ramirez in what was another pick-em fight. So just those two wins alone, I think, stand out amongst anything else what happened in 2022. In terms of the knockout of the year, we've had some good highlight reel KOs. What I like to do when I'm looking at the knockout of the year is I like to look at this, not just the punch and the outcome, but the setup and the pattern of the fight. I thought Joe Cordina against Ogawa was an absolute brilliant KO. That was the best KO I've seen for some time. Two reasons for that. One was the setup. It was obviously that classic little touch jab to the body to bring the elbows down and the hands down and lift the head up. But also the way through that right hand, you know, that kinetic chain, right hand over the garden wall. It wasn't a straight round, it was arced down, very, very Lennox Lewis-esque in the way through that. And he picked it and he got full delivery, full velocity and full length on that shot. And Cordina's KO for me was just absolutely savage. I love that fight. In terms of the upset of the year, again, I'm going to go back to Dimitri Bivol. Whilst fighters won in 2022 who were longer odds to win than Bivol was against Canelo, I think it was just the magnitude of that fight and the way that I controlled the fight. For me, that was a result I didn't see coming, but I just thought it was a fantastic performance from Bivol. I didn't think he had it in him. I'll always call it out if I'm wrong, and on that occasion, I didn't think Bivol had that in him. Best prospects of the year, there might be a little eyebrows raised here. I'm going to go for homegrown prospects. Again, I'm not as close to the situation that I used to be in terms of watching overseas fighters, but I think it won't surprise you that I think Adam Azim is the absolute best prospect of the year. And I also think Caroline Dubois, again, is just fantastic. Really, really fantastic. I think the one I will mention is Mark Castro from the US. He was 16-time national champion. He's one I just don't think is going to make it in the pros. He's highly touted by Golden Boy and in the States. Castro's still unbeaten. He's been dropped once, twice. All right, that's no big deal. But Castro to me doesn't look unbeatable and he doesn't look a future world champion. I might be shocked and proved wrong there. But for me, Adam Azim, Caroline Dubois, right now, the best raw prospects that we've got. And I say raw prospects because they've only had a handful of fights and effectively they've only had 1 or 2 full seasons in boxing. Those two are absolutely brilliant. Okay, we'll turn it up a little bit now. So the most overrated fighter of 2022, it has to be none other than Conor Benn. Obviously, Ben's had his challenges this year. I've been quite vocal about that. But if it was Conor Smith and he'd gone down the traditional domestic route, Conor Benn would have never got to the situation he was in, which was pay-per-view fights and effectively massive arena fights. And that's where Conor Benn landed because obviously of his name, the way he was managed and the way he was matched. But Conor Benn for me is massively overrated. He's way short of world class. And yes, he's still a working pro. Again, I guess we'll see what happens there. But Conor Benn against a fighter who hits him back, who has a good chin, will be absolutely outclassed and he'll be exposed in a big way. I've got no doubt about that. In terms of the most underrated, again, this might raise a few eyebrows. I'm going to go for Joe Joyce. The reason I'm saying Joe Joyce is up until a year ago or so, people were dismissing Joe Joyce because of his age, because he's slow, because he's not even like a George Foreman Mark 1, he's more like a George Foreman Mark 2, maybe without the ring craft. But he's such a dangerous fighter. Why do I think he's underrated? Maybe he's not underrated by the fact that he's avoided, but he's one of those fighters who people are going to wait for him to be put out to pasture, wait till he gets to 37, 38, 39 before he gets his shot, and then he'll get beat. But right now, nobody, and I mean nobody, in heavyweight boxing is even mentioning the name of Joe Joyce. But I think he's underrated because the fact he's not getting mentioned means there's not a great deal of exposure around Joe Joyce other than when he fights. That's just my view. The next award is a little bit tongue-in-cheek. It's an old award that they used to have in KO magazine. It's called the Joe Bugner Just Glad to Be Here Award. Anybody remembers Joe Bugner, who later became Aussie Joe, remembers some of his tame challenges against Muhammad Ali, and there were just nights when Joe Bugner just was glad to be there, really, and he didn't put a shift in. So for me, that award can only go to one person this year, and that's Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte's effort against Tyson Fury, after you consider the backdrop to that, 4 years of being a mandatory challenger, we were told, 4 years of pay-per-view events, 4 years of being a seriously high-profile, very, very vocal heavyweight. The sum of his effort fighting for the World Heavyweight Championships was a few massive overhand rights, what made him look like a fast bowler. Remember Bob Willis, cricketer in the 80s? His technique was horrendous. When he got inside, he did absolutely nothing. And he did about as much in the ring as he did about to promote that fight in the build-up coming up to that, which again was nothing. So I think the Joe Bugner Just Glad to Be Here award goes to Dillian Whyte. His performance wasn't that far from Audley Harrison's when he fought David Hay, again on that farcical Matchroom show back in the day. So if you're going to talk big, you have to put a shift in. And if I sound like I'm being critical, Dillian, not that you'll care or even watch this one, I suggest you watch Tommy Farr against the great Joe Louis, or maybe Brian London, or even like fighters like Richard Dunn against Muhammad Ali. Yes, they got yo-yoed up and down. Don Cockle against Rocky Marciano. British fighters who fought the best in the world and left everything in the ring. You did nothing, and if that was worth 5-6 million, I've got no idea. The next award is going to be the Dick Turpin Highway Robbery Award. No surprises here. Josh Taylor against Jack Catterall. Josh Taylor's a fighter I absolutely love. He's one of my favourite fighters. He didn't win that fight in a million years. Most people saw that. I thought there was real sour grapes from Ben Davison and Josh Taylor after that fight. Just own it, boys. Say, it wasn't our best night. We got the tactics wrong. We were really fortunate to get that decision. Don't be given anything else because people saw what happened. The part of public opinion saw that for what it was. Ian John Lewis got a lot of stick for his 114-112 card that night. All three judges were horrendous. Even the judge who had it to Jack Catterall by a point, really poor scoring. That was a clear, decisive win for Jack Catterall. He controlled the action, he landed the clean shots, his defence was better, and he dominated the majority of that fight. Absolutely scandalous scoring that put boxing in a bad light. So that was the worst one for me. The mismatch of the year. We see a lot of mismatches, don't we? We see a lot of imports and overseas fighters coming over, padding out our UK prospects record. It becomes embarrassing. The one that sticks out for me is the Fraser Clark and Pencho Tzefkov. I think that's pronounced wrong, by the way, but never mind. Fight. Yes, it was 7-0, but if you only look at Fraser Clark's pedigree, you only had to look at the size of Fraser Clark's opponent and the level he'd been boxing. That was always going to be an horrendous mismatch. Fraser Clark was absolutely embarrassed by that fight. We were all embarrassed watching. And at some point, these matchmakers and these broadcasters, they're going to get somebody killed, because these horrendous mismatches with fighters with seriously high pedigree against kids who are like 7, 8 levels below them, who are no more than white collar fighters, these are awful to watch. So that was an embarrassment all around. Shame on you, Sky. You certainly, produced a couple of better opponents, or the last opponent was better for Fraser Clark, but you got to do better than that, boys. You must have to.
I'm the breakfast boy, and I mean that to any man out there what thinks he can take John Fury, because I'm the best fighter out there. There's nobody can beat me, because I'm willing to die and give me life and get 35 years before I lose. I'm an extremely violent man when it comes down to the old fisticuffs, because I'll do anything I can to win. And I call street fighting. It's a dangerous job, and I'm a dangerous dude. Unbeaten. Step in my face is hell coming to breakfast, mate, because I know I can fight. And I'm a dangerous mother, believe me. I'm the real deal, mate. And that goes out to anybody who thinks they can take me today or any other day. It's finished in one way. Them splattered up the floor and the head kicked off.
I think the most awkward moment of 2022 absolutely has to be the post-fight reaction of Anthony Joshua after his second loss to Alexander Usyk. I had to feel for Joshua. He was somewhat exposed in that situation, and his team should have taken him away from that. However, the things that we hear about Joshua, that he can be quite petulant, he likes things his own way. Maybe he has a lot of yes men around him who just really didn't want to approach him and step into that situation. I wouldn't have handled that differently as a coach, but that's just me. Joshua, it was awkward, it was horrendous. And whilst we have to say these things happen, they don't happen that often. It's very, very rare you get those kind of post-fight reactions. And to some extent, you spoiled a beautiful moment for Alexander Usyk. And I love the moment when Usyk just pulled the flag off AJ. He wasn't having none of that. You can spout your tripe, but ultimately you get away off my flag. You get off my countryman's flag. But we forgive you, AJ, by the way. We forgive you. These things happen. But it was definitely the most cringeworthy, awkward moment for me of the entire year. The next award I'm going to have is a little bit tongue-in-cheek. It's the Walter Mitty Fictitious Boxing Record Award. And that can only, there's two people I have in mind for that. And one I'm not going to mention because I don't want gangsters knocking at my door. But the other one I'm going to say is Eddie Hearn. Now, it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek. Myself and Russell Hartley, my good friend, we joke about Eddie being 6-0 and 4 by way of. It's just a bit of a joke. It's a bit of fun. There's no malice in that one. But I know that Eddie Hearn over the years has said that he's boxed before. I'm not really doubting the fact he's been in a ring and he's done a little bit. But sometimes people do this when they're around fighters because they feel quite inadequate and they think, well, I'm going to have to at least prove myself a little bit. Now, Eddie Hearn has made several claims about his amateur boxing record for the Billy Rickey Boxing Club. He said previously he was 4-0 with 3 KOs in the amateurs, and to quote him, I was bloody awful. Anybody who's boxed amateur knows if you're 4-0 with 3 KOs, even at novice level, you're not bloody awful, you're good. It's a good level to even get in a ring at the amateur level, at ABA, England boxing level. So if you had that record, you were not awful. Maybe you were just being, modest about that. I've also heard you say before that you were 3-0 with 2 KOs, and then I recall an interview with Ben Doughty when you said I had a couple of amateur fights. But then let's go back a couple of years on IFL, and you did an interview where IFL, it was very cringeworthy, and they brought forward one of your, apparently your previous opponent, when you had a skills bout. So now you're claiming that you had 2 skills bouts, not 2, 3 or 4 competitive fights. To quote Russell Hartley, you tell a lie, you got to tell another lie, or you got to close it down. What was your record, Eddie? 4-0, 3-0, 2-0, or 2 skills bouts? There was a real glaring error when they brought this guy on who claimed to have had a skills bout with you. And he said, when you turn up, you just get picked out on the night and you fight who's there. Well, that's not true. Anybody who's been involved in amateur boxing knows you are matched before that. Sometimes people go as spares, but skills bouts are completely different. Competitive bouts are completely different. But what the guy also said was, I was a lot older than you, Eddie, because you were so big at 11, you had to fight me and I was 16. Anybody who knows the ABA code knows you do not fight somebody who's 5 years older. You've got to be in the same school year until you get to 18 in the amateurs, unless at 17 it's in competition. Those are the rules of amateur boxing. Why am I going on about this one? Because it's stolen valor, right? There's no, if anybody's never boxed before, so what? It doesn't make you a man. I've said this before. But what was your boxing record? Tell the truth. My gut feeling with Eddie is he knows how to throw a right hand. He's been in a ring and spent time in a ring and spent time in a gym. And my gut feeling is he's probably had some interclub spars, open spars, and that's something that happens, but they are always controlled. And often amateur gyms meet up and this is what they do, the interclub spars. Okay, so Eddie Hearn, I don't think you were 4-0 with 3 KOs. If not, let's see some footage. You're a very self-assured, confident man. So if there is any footage, I am pretty sure you would have dug it out and put it out there. But if not, let's see the footage or let's stop talking about it. Final award, I'm gonna, again, personal preference. I'd love to hear your comments, all of you. As always, please like, share and subscribe, and I appreciate your views. But my final award is going to be the Pundit of the Year. Okay, that could be a commentator, just a general pundit, anyone whatsoever. I think a close Pundit of the Year, this might surprise you for me. I think I'm going to go for Barry Jones. I spoke to Barry Jones several times. He's an absolute gentleman. He is always modest about his boxing accomplishments, and I don't know how he can be so modest when you were Barry Jones and you won a version of a world title and you fought Alessandro Freitas, I might spell that wrong, Freitas, who was a brutal Brazilian fighter, and you gave him 10 good rounds. So Barry, you was a top fighter, you're a top pundit, you call it as it is. Yes, sometimes you moderate what you say for television and you go along with certain things. Everybody has to do that to some extent, but Barry, I think you're the best pundit out there. In terms of a presenter, I think it's Laura Wood. Again, that might raise a few eyebrows. Laura Wood was a great signing for DAZN. We've seen her for the World Cup now. She's so impressive, so well researched. She might not be a boxing aficionado, but she's so presentable. She's great to look at too, and I mean that in a polite way. I don't mean that in any kind of offensive way, but she's absolutely beautiful. She's brilliant at what she does. I think Laura Wood is great. I think Barry Jones is the best pundit out there right now. And again, a controversial one. I'm really warming lately to Johnny Nelson. There seems to be a more relaxed edge about Johnny Nelson. He's had a lot of stick on various YouTube channels, but Johnny Nelson is tongue-in-cheek, but he massively knows boxing and he knows boxers, and he's been there and he's done it. You have to respect that. And I think there's something about Johnny Nelson right now where he's such a captivating interview. I love watching him, and I'm just going to put it out there and say that. I'm just going to close off and say there's loads of fights we all want to see out there. The fights I'm looking forward to, they might happen, they might not. Tank Davis against Ryan Garcia. That is just a fantastic fight. That make fights like this, I'm just going to be all over boxing again. That is a brilliant fight, and I think it's one of those 55-45 fights in favour of Tank, but no result would surprise me there. I'd like to see Joshua Buatsi in a meaningful fight, maybe against Callum Smith. maybe against Anthony Yarde, if Yarde does or does not beat Beterbiev. But I think I want to see Boazzi now. 2016, he was the hottest member of that squad, maybe him and Cordina. And where's Boazzi right now? He still hasn't challenged for world titles. In 2 years, Evander Holyfield won a world title and unified within 3 years. And Boazzi, now 6 years on, 7 years on now, is absolutely nowhere. So somebody needs to match him. Let's find out how good he is. But I'd love to see Boazzi in some really meaningful fights. Who else have I got there? Anthony Joshua against Deontay Wilder. I think that's a fun fight. A lot of people think Wilder would wipe Joshua out. While I've been a critic of Joshua in the past, I don't necessarily think that he would take him out there straight away. I really don't. I think I give Anthony Joshua a very, very good chance in that fight, and I see it as a 50-50 fight. I want to see Conor Benn against McKinson. I don't really want to see Conor Benn back in the ring, but if I do want to see him back in the ring, I want to see him against a meaningful fight, against someone who's hot and someone who can fight, not for a world title. Drop back down, Conor, and I think Martin McKinson, you wouldn't have a clue what to do with him, and he'll box you like kippers. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. Who else have I got? I want to see Shakur Stevenson and Haney. That is an absolute fantastic fight. I love the technical fights as well as the slugfest. That is something I would absolutely love. And who else have I got? And I want to see Terence Crawford against Josh Taylor. I think Josh Taylor, whilst I thought it was a terrible decision, I think Josh Taylor will beat Catterall in the second fight. I think he'll get it right and get the tactics right. And I think he'll produce a win, and then he'll quickly move up to welterweight. And I'd love to see Taylor against Crawford. The skill level will be off the scale there. There won't naturally be a size advantage with Crawford because, as we know, he moved up from 9 stone 9 initially. Some great fights next year. I'm hoping to still watch and enjoy boxing. There's a few things that depends on, and I think several of you know what that means. It depends how certain cases go and if justice is served for certain fighters. But if not, I wish all fighters success. Looking forward to some big fights next year. I haven't mentioned Fury and Usyk because it's a good fight. Everybody wants one champion. Everybody wants to see it. I don't think it's the most interesting, exciting fight in my diary. But again, I'm not being critical. I'm just saying as it is. I've tried to bring you more videos this year. Again, these are my opinions. I'm sure there are more deserving fighters and better fights of the year and better knockouts. Some of these awards are tongue-in-cheek, but again, this is based on what I've seen with my limited exposure these days. Again, I've done this video in one take. I hope you like, subscribe and share. Please leave your comments. Let's hear what you think about all the things that I've said. Let's have your nominations. And I think most importantly, who do you want to see next year in the big fights? So you take care, everybody. Seriously, have a fantastic Christmas. Have a peaceful Christmas. Don't drink too much. Don't get too crazy. Spend time with your family and your loved ones. And I'll see you very soon.
Porky's Corner is proud to be sponsored by Spartan Site Solutions. They are specialists in civil engineering and demolition contracts for the construction industry. Interested parties should visit their website or contact Porky's Corner for a referral at porkycorner@mail.com.